Hi, this is Keith Payne with Superior Lending.
And I'm Brenda Simmons with Presidio Real Estate.
And we're here with your home buying tip of the week.
And today we want to talk about the final few days leading up to the closing of your home.
Yeah, very exciting time.
Yes.
The end is in sight. You're going to get into the home and actually own the home. So the first thing that has to happen is your final walkthrough.
Yes.
What is a final walkthrough, Brenda?
A final walkthrough means that you are literally walking through the home to make sure the home looks in the same condition as what it was when you initially put the offer in.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're looking for any kind of damages, anything that was possibly taken that was supposed to be left. You're making sure that the sellers have complied with their end of the bargain on leaving that home as you saw it before.
Got it. Excellent. And when does that final walkthrough happen?
So you want to do the final walkthrough as close to your closing time as possible. Typically you don't want to go more than 2 or 3 days beforehand, but I've even had it to where we go through the final walkthrough and then immediately go and sign the papers on it. So you can do it up to the very last minute, but I wouldn't go more than 2 or 3 days beforehand.
Excellent. So pretty close to the closing time period.
Exactly. Because by that time your sellers have moved out, and so you're able to see it empty.
Excellent. Okay, and then the closing is next.
Yes, it is. So tell us a little bit more about what does a closing even mean, Keith?
So the closing is the signing of all the documents that secure the loan that you're getting for this home. That give you ownership of the home, and basically you're signing that promissory note saying, I'm going to repay this loan. That's what you're signing. Those documents are the ones you're signing at closing.
And where do you actually do the closing?
So the closing can happen in a number of locations. Typically, it will happen with your lender in their conference room or at a title company. Those are the two most common places. Really, it's what's convenient for you, depending on how far you have to drive to get to it. The other options in the current market are using a mobile notary. So sometimes, if you're out of state buying a home and you're not, within a convenient driving distance of the title or the lender, you'll use a mobile notary and sign at a convenient location for you, whether it's your home or a Starbucks or something like that. Also, due to COVID, there's the opportunity in some circumstances to use an online notary, to do it over a Zoom meeting essentially. And that's something that's come about due to COVID. We don't see that as often, but it's still something that some notaries or some title companies will allow to happen.
So, and now that COVID is kind of moving a little bit beyond us, do you think that that online option is here to stay?
It may be. I think people really want to have the confidence of sitting down across the table from the escrow officer and asking questions and making sure the documents are what they should be, right? And having the confidence of somebody helping them, walking them through those documents and answering those questions. And having a live person, do that just helps you understand better what you're doing. And gives people that that sense of assurity.
For sure, and I can totally understand that. So what do people need to bring then?
Not much. You just have to bring an ID, sometimes 2 forms of ID. So usually it's best to have 2 unless you're told otherwise. And that can be typically your driver's license and either a passport or even a Costco card is used quite often, something with a photo ID. And whoever's on the loan, so if it's you and your spouse, then both of you have to be there. If it's just you, then sometimes the spouse doesn't necessarily need to be there unless they're going to be on title as well. But typically it's whoever's going to be on the loan needs to be there to sign the documents.
Got it. Right. So if like a father is signing, that father would have to be there.
Right. If you do have a co-signer, then that co-signer would also have to be there or sign the documents in another way, such if they're, as we mentioned before, if they're out of state, they use the mobile notary, they would sign, and then you would sign the documents at the final closing.
So at the table then, what does that look like?
So typically the documents, the escrow officer is going to hand you a document, explain that document. So they'll start with usually the closing disclosure, which delineates all the details of the loan, including your interest rate, the amount you're lending, what your title fees are, all the fees incorporated with getting that loan, and kind of gives you the bottom line of what your monthly mortgage is going to look like. And then all the documents beyond that are the actual promissory note, attestations of that you are who you say you are, that you have the funds you say you have. All those final other documents will follow.
Okay, so how long does that process actually take? Now, you've talked about a big stack, right?
It is a big stack, and it depends on the type of loan you're doing, but it can be 30 minutes to an hour. It really depends on how many questions you might have for the escrow officer and how chatty you are, right? Some
Right.
escrow officers are very personable and they like to ask a lot of questions. So there's a lot of conversations happening. So it's a great opportunity to get to know you individually, and but also help you feel confident, in the purchase you're making and in this big obligation you're taking on, that everything's moving along smoothly.
Perfect. So usually a buyer has to bring funds to the table. Keith, will you explain to us how do they actually bring funds to the table?
Right. So when we say bring funds to the table, we're not asking you to show up with a check, typically, although some people do cashier's checks.
Right.
But normally what's happening is you're wiring those funds out of your bank account to the title company. And if you have a co-borrower or you're getting funds gifted to you, that's also being wired to the title company. So the title company is acting as the bank, right? They're holding the money in escrow for distributing to the appropriate entities. So that's usually happening a day or 3 days or maybe more prior to the closing. So the funds are all accessible and ready to go, and once you've signed the documents, then they can distribute those funds as delineated in the loan documents.
Awesome. I've actually even seen the wiring instructions be given at the closing table, and that's totally normal as well. And if that happens, then you need to immediately go out and make that wire fund transfer so that all those funds can be
Right.
collected.
It's nice to have it done prior.
It is.
That way everything's cleaner and done, and nobody's waiting or delaying anything because we're waiting for funds to be acquired and input and then distributed.
Perfect. My last question about this then is, what happens behind the scenes once that is done?
Great question. So after your documents all signed, the title company then distributes those documents appropriately, right? The lender gets their copy of the documents. You should have a copy either in printed or electronic form it's provided to you. But also they're going to disperse the funds. So all the funds that they've collected, whether down payment from you or from a co-borrower, they're going to distribute those funds to the appropriate entities. So to pay off the existing seller and their company, that's where all those funds are going. And they're going to record all that information with the county. So once that is recorded, then you are then in possession of the home. After you've signed all the documents, the final question people have is, where are my keys?
Yes,
And-
those are the big questions, right?
And what's funny is we don't have the keys as the lender or the title company, but the seller still has the keys at that point. So
Yes.
how does the buyer then get their keys, Brenda?
Well, actually, the first question is, when can you get the keys? And that is designated by the contract, the real estate purchase contract. So if you remember, there's a little section on there that says when you get possession, and it could be upon recording, which is basically immediately, or a few days out, or sometimes, especially in this market, we're seeing a lot of leasebacks to the seller. And that is actually an additional addendum that lays out all of the dates of when that happens. So if there is a leaseback, then you'll have an actual date. When that time comes, what happens is your buyer's agent and the seller's agent will communicate, and they will meet to exchange the key, one key. All of the extra keys and the garage door openers and anything else that's used to enter the property, those will typically be put on a counter or in a cabinet or something like that. But then the agents will exchange the key, and then the buyer's agent will contact the buyer and give them that key. Now, a lot of buyers or new owners will then take those keys and throw them away because they want to get the home rekeyed. And that is done through your home warranty. Most of the home warranties will offer that for free. As a service for the new homeowners.
It's just good to have your home secure
is.
and feel
It
like
is.
you're the only one who can get in.
Yeah,
So that's
exactly.
nice to do. Well, that's all we have on the closing and the final walkthrough and how to get your keys to your house and be a new homeowner. We hope this has been a helpful home buying tip of the week. Again, I'm Keith Payne with Superior Lending.
And I'm Brenda Simmons with Presidio Real Estate.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.